Good morning, everybody. How are you all? I do hope that this broadcast today finds you very well indeed. My name is Ali Board, just in case you haven't met me before, and this is Technique Tuesday, coming live to you on Facebook via my studio down in Farm Studio down here in Dorset on the south coast of the UK. Of course, you might be watching on Catch Up too. You might be watching via my blog, the Technique Tuesday blog over on the Learning to Paint website, or you might be watching via YouTube as well. No matter how you are watching this morning, you're very, very welcome indeed. It's lovely to have you here. Now, what I try to do every time that I go live is I try to give a nod to those people who have taken the time and trouble to tune in live, because I know you all have very busy lives, and it's nice to have a bit of a chat as the demonstration progresses. Now, we do have a small competition. We do have a small competition where we kind of vie to be the first person to have made a comment. We've got a new first person today, and that is the lovely Fee. Good morning, Fee. Very nice to have you here. Who else have we got in the room? We have got Martin. Oh, you're zipping by all terribly quickly. Martina. Maureen, Jane is on the Isle of Man and it's sunny. I'm very glad for you. It's grey is the only way to describe Dorset today. Grey. Who else we got? Linda D. Off to visit a friend today, so we'll have to watch later. Go. Much more important to go and visit friends. Go. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll catch up later. Angie is saying, good morning, Ali. Good morning, everyone out there. If only I could read on a Tuesday morning. It'd be marvellous, wouldn't it? Judy, just down the road, is saying, good morning. Judy, if I shout loud enough, you can probably hear me, my lovely. Rabina, who else we got? Jane, Rosie over in France. What's Heather saying? Heather is saying, good morning. I just made it after giving my cherry tree a haircut. No answer to that, Heather. Congratulations. Anne B, good morning, Ali and friends. It's a bit damp and cloudy here in Leighton Buzzard, and my mother-in-law just rang and she said it's the same in Ferndown, just down the road. Yes, not very nice at all. Alice, good morning. Ali D, good morning. D, good morning, lovely. Pam and Kat, good morning to everyone who has tuned in. Now, if this is your first Technique Tuesday, back for a while, this is part 4. I think I've lost count. Part 4 of my printmaking project, where we are looking at a little bit of dry point printmaking. Next week is the mega exciting week when I'm going to be running it through my press. We've been looking at materials, we've been looking at how to prep a plate, we've been looking at how to prep a drawing. So today is going to be a slightly shorter broadcast today because it's mark making. I'm going to show you how I start it, but then I'm going to finish it away from camera because effectively it's just a woman scratching away at a piece of plastic with a needle. But I couldn't not broadcast it live. I will complete it away, and then we'll come back together next week, and that's when we're going to run it through a press. I'm slightly nervous about next week. Isn't that funny? Who else have we got who's just popped up? Joe, good morning. And Trudy just down the road as well. Good morning to all of you. Now, while I have your attention, just before we get to the printmaking part of it, I do want to share a little bit of news with everybody. Good morning, Patricia. So I'm going to do a little bit of promotion. I do hope that you will stick with me for this. So we have Dorset Art Weeks coming up, the 14th to the 29th of May. What is Dorset Art Weeks? Dorset Art Weeks is where over 300 artists right across the county throw open the doors of their respective studios and they invite the general public in. And everybody's got a different reason for inviting the general public in. Some have a new collection of work. Some have, like myself, they have teaching to promote. Or this year, my main, theme of Dorset Art Week is going to be Plan B. And just because you might not be able to make it down to Dorset, you can see there's the details of my studio, down in Farm Studio. I'm venue number 63. And there's the start of my address, but if you Google Down in Farm Studio, you can find me very easily. I am open every single day of the event from 10 until 4. Unless you happen to be passing out of those hours and you'd like to pop in, you only have to let me know, and I will make sure that I'm here and that I will put the coffee on and we can have a catch up. But if you can't make it down to Dorset, you may remember last year when we did this event, event. Doesn't often happen 2 years in a row, but last year when we did this event, I did it online as well, so that if you weren't able to make it down to Dorset, that didn't mean that you had to miss out. And I'm just in the process of putting together a really exciting array of events that are going to happen online at the same time. Some are going to be in collaboration with people that you know, and some are going to be in collaboration with people you have never met before. So I'm just in the process of putting that together. I'm really, really excited about all of those things. It's lovely to have a big project on the horizon. What's Joe saying? Joe saying, morning all, gremlins again. I'm assuming that is internet gremlins, not the rest. What's Ali D saying? Ali D is saying, your hair is looking very lovely indeed. Have you had a bit of a pamper? No, I had a shower this morning. That's why it looks clean and not full of dog or horse or chicken. Bless you, thank you. Thea, good morning to everybody. And Anne is saying she's looking forward to next week with the inking up. Shall we crack on with it? Let's go to that overhead camera and let's start the mark making, shall we? So here is kind of where we left it last week. I'll talk more about this in just a second. This was the experiment that I did running my little plate experiment, my little bit of plastic, where I was experimenting with some of the marks that I could make. I was experimenting with my press, reminding myself things like how you ink up a plate, all of those kind of things I remember now. And taking an impression, you can see how beautifully that fits in there, and making sure that I understand where the marks are going to be made, how to ink them up, all of those kind of things. So that was my dry run last week. And I'm just going to flip this over because it's going to make a much better version of you being able to see the printmaking plate. I'm going to bring it down. Oh, where can I put it where it's not reflecting off anything? There isn't a space. There it is, over there, look. Unfortunately, you can probably see up my nostrils, but we'll skim over that. Now, this was the beautiful portrait that I did of beautiful Dodge. Here is my reference material. Still haven't seen Dodge for a few days now, it has to be said. So I'm hoping that Dodge has moved on to pastures greener or is sitting on a nest somewhere. And just in case you weren't entirely sure of why she was called Dodgy, she only had one leg. But I do want to kind of pay tribute to dear old Dodge in using her as inspiration for this plate. So let's go back to our overhead camera. You can see just while you were away, I taped it down to that bit of white cartridge paper just so that I can see it more clearly. And also you will notice that it's in reverse. Let's just show you again. There's Dodgy the right way round, and there's Dodgy in reverse, because of course we mustn't forget that this plate, when it's inked up, is going to be put that way down on a piece of paper. And so if I want Dodgy this way round, then I have to do it this way round. Okay, does make your head hurt after a while. Now, why have I taped it to a piece of white cartridge paper? I've taped it to a piece of white cartridge paper because we also have close-up camera, and that is what I'm going to be using for the majority of today's demonstration, because I want you to see up close and personal the tools that I'm going to be using. So what tools am I going to be using? These are the two tools I'm going to be using, because on my little test plate here, they were the tools that made the most interesting marks. So this one, which is effectively an old needle, if I remember correctly, it was actually a push pin, you know, like a map pin, one of those really, really strong ones. I think that's what this is a Heath Robinson type of tool. So it's a bit of doweling with that end of the push pin glued. We drilled out, I say we, any of you that know my husband know that we isn't an option, it was all him. He drilled out the end, we popped the push pin in, and then we used a little bit of araldite glue to glue it into the end. I'll show you that in close up in a second. That created that really fine mark in there. And then this tool is actually a tool meant for this type of printmaking, called a dry point marking tool, or a dry point needle. It looks like a pen. It's got a much more hefty steel tip. in, and it makes a slightly fatter line. So that was those lines. So just to show you on the example, this tool here made these marks here, and a few of the kind of finer ones that I was playing about with, and this tool here made the thicker ones. Now I didn't ink it up especially well on the plate. I left a little bit of ink residue, and I need to be mindful of that the next time I do it. I actually inked it up a little bit with a bit more finesse on this one. You can see the lines a little bit more clearly, but it doesn't show up so well on that kind of craft paper. So those are the two tools that I'm going to be using today. So let's flip Dodge back over. Let's get rid of some things, and then let's get into close-up camera. So let's show you the end of these tools so that you can see them a little more clearly. Here is that push pin, arrow-dited. There you can see into the end of my piece of doweling. My husband also kind of took the edges off of this bit of doweling so that it's a bit more comfortable to hold. And then this is the proper tool itself. If you wanted to find these, go back to week 1 of this printmaking project, part 1 of this printmaking project, over on the Learning to Paint website on the Technique Tuesday blog. There's a link to this so that you can find them without having to hunt around for them. But you can see that it is much thicker, much more steady. This is a really heavy tool in my hand. This one obviously only a fine piece of doweling and much more lightweight. Okay, why am I using the two? I'm using the two because I want some really fine lines, and I want some slightly thicker ones. So that brings us back to the drawing that I did of Dodge. You can see there where I was using the marker pen last week on the plastic to create those little bits of marks made. So I'm going to do a small section today in that I'm going to use a couple of the tools plus one more that I'll introduce to you in a second, so that you can see and possibly hear the way that I'm making the marks. I'm going to start off with this one. I'm going to start off with the fine one. Woo! This is very fine work. I should have got my stronger glasses on, except I can get my head into shot because you can't see in this camera. And I'm going to start by scratching away a few of those marks. It's helpful that I've got a little bit of marker pen on there, because it's kind of scratching into that marker pen so that I can see where I have been. Let's tilt it in the light there. You can see, can you see those little scratches across the plastic as well? Those will show up when I pass it through the press. They won't show up as much as those marks there. Look at that, you can see those nice and clearly. That is what's known as plate tone. Okay, you can burnish plate tone out of a plastic plate, but I don't actually want to. You can even see my fingerprints there, look. I might just degrease it before I add any ink to it, but I'll think about that next week. So there you can see those marks really quite clearly in the camera that I have made. So using my fine tool, I find it easier to kind of pull the marks than I do to push back through them, just because I think my little kind of needle sharp tip would get stuck in them if I tried to sort of push my way back through. Now with a plastic you can also make some dots by really kind of pushing into the plastic, and I got some nice fine little details there too. Let's get that back into the light so that you can see those nice and clearly. Where was it that I could see them? Oh, I can't quite tilt it into the camera. There we go. You can see them carved into that plastic, working very well. Now I'm going to use, I've got a little bit of marker pen on the tip of my needle, so I'm going to clean that off, and I'm going to start working on these eye sections. I need to make sure that they retain that detail. I don't want them kind of going off at a tangent, so I'm doing this bit a little bit slower. I am pressing really quite hard into my plastic to make sure that it doesn't slip. You can see those marks there, And let's get the top of that beak in, that beak that was posing a real problem in our foreshortening last week. Now you will get away with a print of having marks made that aren't as neat and tidy as perhaps you would ever want them to be, just because the nature of printmaking is such that it's very immediate. It kind of has an element of danger and unpredictability involved in it. So you don't have to worry so much about being sort of super precise. Me, because I'm a perfectionist, of course, I demand that I am precise, but sometimes you really just have to live with the marks that you've made. So I've made a few of those there with my very fine needle. I'm now going to go back into it with my slightly broader and build on those marks that I've made. Now this is really hard to describe. I was when I was prepping for today, yesterday, I usually do my prep on a Monday, I was thinking about how I can describe to you the difference between what this tool feels like. It's really scratchy and very hard. I can feel it digging into the plastic and pulling against the fibres. This one, because it's made for purpose, is much smoother. It kind of glides over the surface a little more. And the difference is you probably can't hear this one as much. It does possibly have a little bit less control because it's kind of gliding across the plastic, but it definitely feels a little bit nicer. So there can you see slightly thicker lines going on there. What I can do is use that thicker tool for making sure that I carve away any part of the robin that I want it to be super black. So the eyes, some of the shadows under the wings. Let's use it for the edge over here as well. It doesn't really matter which one you use, it has to be said. But what's more important is that you stop from time to time and you check how well it's going. So I think that's as many marks as I'm actually going to make just for the purposes of today's demonstration. Away from the camera I will work on it a lot more. But there was one more thing that I wanted to share with you today. Let's go back to the main overhead camera. Now I did introduce this when we were talking about tools and materials right back at the start of this printmaking project. Now this, as you can see, this ages the tool. For those of you who know the brand Woolworths, I can't even remember the last time that Woolworths was a shop. You might have a posher version of this, you might have a Dremel type of tool, but effectively what it does is, unlike a drill, it's a bit more manageable than a drill. And mine has a couple of interesting little features. I mean, it is as old as the hills, and I use it for polishing some of the jewellery that I make and all sorts of things, for using as a small drill. I find it kind of easier to use because I can handle it more like a pen and less like a drill. But if I just turn it on for the moment, it does make a whole load of racket, so you might get deafened. So what it does is rotate that end. I'll talk more about that in a second. But it also has a little thing on the end where I can increase the speed. Okay, I've actually got it on the minimum setting at the moment because I don't want to lose control of it. And what I've got in the end, and actually let's take you into the close-up camera so that you can see it, is that I've got a little miniature steel brush, wire brush in there. It's got the odd little filament kind of disappearing off at an angle. But what I'm going to use this for is hopefully to create a kind of feather effect on my robin. Now the thing I've got, if any of you are used to using a battery eraser, you'll know exactly what it is that I'm about to talk about. So if I put it onto my plate and I hold it down, it's literally going to burnish a hole in my plate. So I've got to be quite careful with it. So what I'm going to do is, as it rotates, I'm just kind of tap it onto that surface, and what it should do is create, let's find it for you, this little kind of feathery effect. Can you see that? Which I really liked when I passed it through the press, because it created this kind of texture. Not as finite and not as structural as the kind of strong linear marks that I was making. But these two here were using a wire brush, and they didn't look like feather to me. They looked more like fur. So if I was doing a cat or a dog or a horse or something, then maybe I would have used a wire brush. But because this looks a little bit more feathery, I thought this would make for a better tool. So I'm going to use that around and about. And obviously I'm going to do more of this away from the camera, but I thought I would just introduce it to you today. So let me do a little bit. I'm going to turn it on, and then I'm probably going to not chat as much as I do it so that I can concentrate and you can watch what I'm doing. And then I'll do a few, and then we'll come back together and we'll see how it fares on the surface. Okay, you ready? So tapping really, really lightly, just at the ends of some of those lines that I did. I'm trying to move it around as well, so that I get a different mark each time. And let's err on the side of caution, shall we? And let's see if we can get that into the light to see what marks we made. Yes, look at that. So I've got some linear marks, and I've got some kind of feathery style of marks. Ooh, I've got high hopes for that. Let's hope it lives up to what I expect it to do. Let's get it back in the light so that you can see. There we go. Those kind of lovely feathery types of marks. Let's do a little bit more of that. I'm going to do a little bit more of it over here, I think. So tool goes back on. You watch that tip start to rotate. There we go. And then over here. How are we doing? That's okay. That's not too bad. Now the good news is with any kind of plate like this, if I kind of err on the side of caution and I make the marks that I want to make and ink it up and take a press, if it hasn't got enough, I can take the plate away, add some more to it, and then come back and take another pressing of it. So it is incremental printmaking, where you can make changes as you go along. And Jane has just said that looks addictive. Yeah, it is a little bit. I have to really rein it in while I'm doing it. And there's nothing to say that you have to do these in this order. I could go around with my little rotating tool, put all the feathery marks in, and then go back in with some of my more linear tools and add some extra texture over the top. Let's just see if we can get that into the light so that you can see it. So it's nice to kind of do a little bit, add a little bit more, and then see where we are with it. But that is certainly the start of the mark making that I'm going to be doing. Let's just go back to that overhead shot so you can kind of see clearly. Fran is just saying, I've got a drill like that with lots of different tips and needle, and it's quieter too. Yeah, mine is pretty noisy, it has to be said. Not particularly conducive to doing a live broadcast, but when I finish the plate off, hopefully no one's going to care because I'm in the studio on my own today. So you can see I've got a lot of work to do. I've got a lot of feathering to put back in on Dodge. I've got some linear work to do. I've got some work to the twig, to the branch to do as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all of that away from the camera so that next week we can come back together and by then I will have worked out a way of showing you how I run it through the printing press. That's going to be a challenge, setting up my cameras for next week, and it might be a little bit more of a kind of on location, because the press is just behind me, usually the bit of the studio that you don't see. But you know what? That's going to be my challenge for next week, isn't it? I'm really looking forward to finishing this plate off and to getting it all ready for you so that next week you can see it inked up. Now keep an eye on my social media. There's some big events coming up. Not only Dorset Art Weeks, but some big announcements in terms of the All Aboard Artists. My membership scheme is getting relaunched in July. You may have seen kind of the worst kept secret in the world in terms of what the artist demo days are potentially up to. We're hoping to be able to launch that soon. I've got an SAA workshop coming up at the end of April. I'm going to be doing Corfe Castle in my new brand of watercolour paint. So if you are an SAA member, you'll be able to either see me in person or tune in to do a paint along with that. I'm really excited about that. And I'm actually going to go away on holiday in April, whoop whoop, because we need to have a little bit of a break. And the lovely Dee, who you guys know as being an admin on that page, is coming and chicken sitting for me. So isn't that astonishingly kind of her? Now, if you want to keep an eye on the Plan B project, then you need to go over to the sister website. That's alisonseaboard.co.uk. Lots of things for you to take part in. Lots of things for you to interact with. I do hope that you're enjoying all of the things that we are all putting together for you recently. Keep being creative, won't you? Keep sharing it with me as well. I may not always comment on social media, but I assure you I always see it. So until I see you either in person or online very soon, take care of each other, won't you? Enjoy the weather. Let's hope the rain passes and we can all get back out in the garden. Take care, lovely people. Bye.